Hey everyone, it's Haunt and welcome to my Pokemon channel. I am so excited to have you. So I played a lot of Pokemon as a child. My first time playing any kind of Pokemon game was when I was a small child, and the first Pokemon game I ever played was Pokemon Crystal. And I still remember being amazed surfing around in the overworld at just how much there was to explore and discover. Growing up, me and my brother used to watch the anime together, and I watched the anime every day before I went to elementary school. I'm not sure how many hours I had put into Pokemon Sapphire as a child, but that was the copy that I had. It was just the world that I lived in. Growing up, I lived and breathed Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, and I almost lived and breathed Johto, but unfortunately, as luck would have it, my copy of Heart Gold and Soul Silver blue screened. Then X and Y came, and I was getting into high school, and it turns out that life comes at you fast, and there are other things you have to focus on. Things like school, college, graduating, getting the job that you want, finding a place to call home, and even getting a cute little cat. I do have a cute little cat. So that's what I did. I went on and did other things. And then I realized something. I finally had free time. I ended up falling back into love with gaming as an adult with more time and more money at my disposal. My favorite games are the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, and of course Elden Ring. I started getting more curious about Pokemon again, specifically competitive Pokemon, after being exposed to it. And by it, let's just say I mean the VGC community. I see this as a new way of looking at a series of games that I treasured as a child. So here we are today. With the start of Regulation G, I've decided to document my journey diving headfirst into the world of VGC. Since this is my first VGC video, enjoy the battles and yapping. This is an introduction as to who I am as a person and a player. So without further ado, here's 2 casual battles done a day or 2 before Reg G officially dropped. So I did play a little bit of Reg G and was able to hit highish Great Ball tier. I don't remember exactly what I peaked at, but it was somewhere around there. It was my first time putting together an EV training my Pokemon with power items, so it's not like I'm starting Reg G with absolutely zero knowledge or idea of what's going on. I tried putting together a team for Reg G and testing it out before it started, and I did end up messing up some things on it and ended up making some major changes from what you see right here. I've learned already that there are some things that seem like a good idea when team building on Showdown, but don't really work on Cart. And there are some ideas that seem good in your head, but the moment you try to explain them out loud to another person, you realize how insane you sound. It's really silly. For example, granted, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but slapping U-turn on Volcarona for some reason, because I thought I could use the utility even though that's just no good. That's just not what you're supposed to do, I think. But don't worry, it now has Rage Powder on it. Part of the learning curve of being a new VGC player is learning how to play around teams that use Incineroar. Intimidate drops, Fake Out, and Parting Shot are all such powerful tools in Incense Kit. This might be crazy. I'm gonna do it. I don't know. Another thing I struggled with initially was understanding how to play around Trick Room teams. And if I'm being candid with you, learning the difference between regular Ursaluna and Blood Moon Ursaluna. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm really embarrassed to admit that. When I first saw Blood Moon Ursaluna, I think my genuine reaction was, oh my gosh, why is it standing on 2 legs? which was basically my reaction to Lycanroc 2, except that's a wolf, and honestly, it's a pretty certified noob moment if you ask me. Both die this turn. I think we just hit this, double in. Yeah. I don't know what to do. This is good. Oh, thank goodness. But learning how to play around Trick Room teams is tough because I knew learning speed tiers was pretty important going into VGC. Pretty hard to play a game or knock out a Pokemon if it just knocks you out first, you know? So I focused on trying to knock out the Trick Room setter when possible last regulation, and utilizing Protect to stall out where I need to, and trying to identify just whatever I believed in that moment was my win condition. We get Grassy Glit into, but you know, the Sash, it did what it needed to do, but yeah, just hit detect. I think this is when we start turtling. Pelipper Archelodon rain teams last regulation also proved for me to be really difficult to navigate around initially. Honestly, I found quite a lot of success in killing that dang bird and getting some speed control and just figuring out the rest as the battle goes on. I think at some point it just clicked for me, like, I really don't like leaving this bird alive. I think it's problematic, and I just don't want to play an endgame with it. But ultimately, what this taught me was how important weather could be as part of a team's core strategy in VGC. I try to learn from my opponents where I can. Unless it's a day where I just get on and lose back to back to back, I try to learn at least something from my opponent instead of coping and saying that they just know better than me. Realistically, the average VGC player knows a lot more about playing VGC than I do. Losing is just a natural part of the learning process, and it's just something I have to become comfortable with and learn from to be able to be more successful. This is scary. Because low-key we lose this if we lose the turtle. I do have quite a few takeaways of playing in Reg H. For example, Indeedee and Rillaboom, both playing against them and with them, taught me the benefit of having terrain priority. I did play with Rillaboom in Reg H on my own team, so I also understand the value of being able to override the opponent's terrain with your own as an option. Secondly, speed control and knowing your speed tiers is also something that is hugely important to consider during team building and while navigating ranked games. Not sure if anyone else feels this, but sometimes it feels like I just randomly get hit in the head with a rock or something while I'm playing and forget who moves first in the next turn, which is pretty bad. But knowing your speed tiers helps with planning out what the next turn or two will look like, depending on the mons and moveset on each side, among other things. Information is power, and being able to put 2 and 2 together and make inferences is an important skill to develop. If a mon can either be EV'd to be really speedy or have good speed and great attack stats, and I'm caught off that I outspeed that mon, I know that attack coming in might be nastier than anticipated and can plan around that the next turn. You have a better idea of what options are optimal and which ones would be throwing, I guess. Third, understanding weather control and weather setting are vital to strategies and counter strategies. Some abilities are activated in the sun. The power of some moves can be increased or decreased depending on the weather, and the accuracy check on some moves can be totally bypassed or changed in some way. And finally, I generally just call this category the other utility category, and it's basically moves like U-turn that provide some sort of extraneous utility that's not necessarily encapsulated by what I've mentioned before. So the ability to use U-turn instead of hard pivot, and as implied before when talking about Incineroar, moves like Parting Shot that can cause attack and special attack drops, or Fake Out to make the opponent flinch. Redirection moves like Rage Powder or Follow Me, support moves like Helping Hand, healing moves like Floral Healing, and moves and abilities that boost attack and defense stats also come in pretty handy. These are basically all the things that I learned and I'm aware of when playing my ranked games or building out a team. And when selecting my 4 Mons in a game, I consider what synergies I have and what my opponent has, and what both of our most optimal options are. I'm not always correct, and with a new regulation comes access to new Mons and a new meta to learn. To elaborate on what I mentioned earlier about the power of information and inferences, I'm still trying to get better at reading what builds, I guess I would call them, builds, opposing Mons may have based on their speed, how much damage they took from a move on the first turn, a telling move on as part of their moveset, or what items they may have, unless it's something pretty apparent like a Rocky helmet, leftovers, a covert cloak, etc. This takes time and consistent play and watching other VGC players play the game to develop, and maybe hitting the books. And by the books, I mean Smogon and VGC YouTube. If you're already an experienced VGC player, you may not viscerally remember what it was like to learn all of this stuff from the ground up. If I'm being honest, I don't even know the type advantage chart like that, which is pretty embarrassing to admit in a VGC video. But hey, at least the improvement arc is gonna go crazy, right? Iron defense, okay. I think we just go for it. There's so many things I overlooked about Pokemon as a child that I find absolutely overwhelming to learn all at once as an adult. For example, EV spreads, IVs, natures, abilities, battle items, proper team building and understanding roles, team archetypes, speed tiers, utility moves, synergies, matchups. The list could really go on. Although I said I don't try to cope with the loss by saying the opponent just has more game knowledge than me, it is largely a true statement. The amount of knowledge that you have to learn and process as a childhood casual player learning VGC as an adult is pretty vast. But I think if I just keep at it, I might get better and learn a thing or two along the way. I find learning something new to be fun and refreshing. Some of you have maybe played a FromSoft game and understand the appeal of those games. My main series of games that I love to know life are FromSoft games. Some of you will understandably look at me funny for that, which I get, because I'll watch an 1.5-hour video about collision walls in Dark Souls. Shout out to the channel called Illusory Walls. But yeah, collision walls in Dark Souls Remastered, and my eyes will be glued to the screen the entire time. I'm not a no-hitter or challenge runner, but I love trying out all different kinds of builds, changing up my playstyle and using fun weapons. My favorite thing by far is co-op summoning. I love being summoned by strangers into their Elden Ring world and helping them through a legacy dungeon or fighting a boss. I'm not the famous Elden Ring creator Let Me Solar Her, but I do love helping and sharing knowledge. But the important part that relates to VGC is that knowledge and that ability did not come intuitively, and it did not come overnight. I love watching people play FromSoft games for the first time, and it's astounding to see their growth from a player who doesn't even know how to lock on and off of an enemy or how to equip an item to their hotbar become the Elden Lord, at least eventually. I've sunk hundreds of hours into those games, and I'm constantly consuming FromSoftware content. Dedicated effort really goes a long way in carrying yourself to improvement and success. I set some goals for Reg G to help guide that journey. So, my goals for Reg G are as follows. 1. To first and foremost, have fun. Playing Pokemon is not my full-time job. I'm not gonna sweat it like it is, I just want to have a good time on the game. 2. I want to continue to learn something from each game, no matter how seemingly small or immaterial it is. I'd like to focus on learning how to use redirection specifically to my advantage, and learn how to work with mons I've never played with a day in my life. I want to discover new synergies, improve team building capacities, and continue to develop my game knowledge and awareness. 3. Engage with more VGC content and watch more top-level tournament play. And last, continue to share my journey and growth with you guys. I think it can be nice to see part of your journey, whether it be in the past or current, reflected in someone else's story and growth. Plus, I just like sharing. I know this is mainly an intro video with some commentary in the back, but please expect more commentary from me in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, it really helps out the channel, and drop a comment if you have something to say. If you would like to join me along for this ride, please hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you. I hope you find it just as exciting as I do, and I hope to see you again in the future. Thank you so much for watching!